Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble! Get ready to rumble!
Pump up the jig, yo, pump it up, yo, pump it.
Welcome back to TalkingSports.tv at Charley Fitzwhiskeys. I'm Josh Rimmer alongside Marty York and also naughty Nikki. Joining us on the line right now, broadcasting legend, also host of Larry King now on Aura TV, Larry King. Larry, thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Good to be with you, Josh.
Larry, first of all, I want to get your thoughts on what's been going on with Alex Rodriguez here over the last couple weeks. Wanted to get your thoughts on what he's been going through.
Well, the whole thing is a sad mess. Baseball's investigating this for such a long time, and baseball wants him out. The Yankees don't want to pay that contract. They suspend him for all this time, and he's entitled to appeal, and he's appealed. The whole thing is weird. He's bringing charges against the team. The team is threatening his lawyers. The whole thing is bizarre. If the Yankees wanted to just eat the whole thing, what they could do is just release him and pay the rest of his contract. If he's suspended next year, they won't have to pay that. So it'll cost them 2 years' pay. That would be my recommendation. You want this story to go away, it can go away tomorrow. You end all lawsuits, everything stops, you release him. So you eat the money after a year. Let's say he's suspended for a year. This way the story will go on and on. It's become a saga. It's sad for the game. The whole thing is just a mess.
Larry, the last time we spoke at the beginning of the baseball season when the Dodgers were having some trouble and Dodgers manager Don Mattingly was on the hot seat. How impressed have you been with this Dodgers turnaround?
Well, I always loved Mattingly. I think he's going to be a terrific manager. He's learning a lot, but he's getting better and better. I think it's a very good team. We're not hitting now at all. Even though we had this run, we're really not hitting. We're losing today. This will be, if we lose today, the first time we lost 3 in a row in 3 months. But it's a solid team, and as long as you got like Ryu, Greinke, and Kershaw, you're not going to lose too many in a row, and you're going to be awful tough in the playoffs when you have 3 top starters that can give you 9 innings. You got a strong bullpen, and I'm sure that the Ramirez's and the Gonzalez's and the Puigs, and Puig's changed the team a lot. He's benched today. They're going to be a solid team. I would favor them to win the World Series if I were betting on them now. But at this point, even though they're playing great overall, they're really not hitting.
Larry, NFL season is almost here. Regular season right around the corner, 2 weeks away. Who are you picking this year to be in the Super Bowl, Larry? What team should we be having a close eye on? Who do you like?
Well, my heart's with the Dolphins because I broadcast the Dolphins. I did their perfect season. In fact, they celebrated the 40th anniversary of that Super Bowl win today at the White House. I did the color that whole season. So I'm emotionally tied to the Dolphins, but I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender just yet. They might win. They might win the conference, depending on how strong the Patriots are. I like the Bengals a lot. I don't dismiss the Lions. I think the Broncos will have a lot to say. I think it's going to be a very, very tough year all the way around. This is the Saints should be coming back with the coach back. You never count the New Orleans out of things. San Francisco is very tough. I love Seattle. If I'm forced, if you got me back to the wall, Seattle wins the Super Bowl.
Larry, you mentioned about the Dolphins visiting the White House today, the perfect season, the 72 team. What do you think of some of the guys not showing up, like Kuchenberg didn't want to be there because of Obama?
I think that's terrible. I think that's a lack of respect for your government. I like Kuch a lot, but that's a really absurd thing to do. To turn your back on the White House invitation, no matter what your feelings are, you disagree with policy, that's stupid. Just stupid, and I think that casts a bad light on what was a wonderful team and wonderful cohesiveness. I just feel terrible about it.
Larry, before we let you go, let us know what's coming up on Larry King now on Aura TV. What do you got coming up this week?
Well, I just taped some of the stars of Arrested Development. I just taped Ron Paul, the former congressman who's got his own website now, network. we got a lot of big things. We're scheduling a lot of people. We're going to New York, and we're going to be doing. Let's see, who are we doing in New York? We're doing Mike Tyson. We're going to have a show, great show coming. I'll tip you off first. Tyson and Holyfield together for an hour.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
I hope everyone's ears stay
You're bitter.
Larry, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. We'll definitely do this again soon. All the best to you.
You got it. You too, baby. Good luck at the bar.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Folks, that was Larry King. And this is an example of the kind of guests, the caliber of guests that you'll get here on TalkingSports.tv. Josh Rimmer, as we mentioned in the video before we went on air, is extremely well connected. And Larry King is just one of many, countless people that Josh will get readily on air in the bar and during live interviews. And I'll do my share as well. After 30 plus years in the business, I have my share of contacts as well. So on Nightcap and on the York Report, you're going to see the folks like Larry King, and of course, all the regulars, Naughty Nikki and the whole gang will be here on a regular basis. Now, let's turn this over to Marvelous Max, another one of our regulars. Max, we're going to stick a mic in your face, and we're going to ask you to comment on who you think the Super Bowl champion will be.
Well, I originally had a pick of Denver and Seattle going to the Super Bowl. I thought that would be a good contrast between one of the best offenses in the NFL against, in my opinion, the greatest defense since I've seen since Baltimore, or has the potential to be, with so much depth along the defensive line, linebackers, defensive backs. They've got the whole show. With recent news that Von Miller's suspended for 6 games, that is absolutely devastating news for the Denver Broncos because they couldn't afford to lose him. Elvis Dumervil obviously moved on to the Ravens with the whole fax scandal, so they really don't have a pass rush without Miller now. And we can see in the NFL, in a passing league, how much that's necessary to teams. So I'm going to scratch Denver from the card. I'm going to keep Seattle because they've done enough in the preseason. They've done enough in the offseason with signing players, and they've had a great draft to convince me that they're ready to take that step. I'm going to kind of go with very tired pick, but I think it really could hold true this season. I think this is the Patriots' year, and I think the Patriots. I think the Patriots.
Okay, hold it right there. We'll get to that in a second. I want Hot Haley to comment on that in a minute, but because I know her views about the Patriots.
You saw my face.
But Max is one of our young NFL gurus. We have several NFL gurus. Well, Hot Haley young too, obviously, and she's one
Should
of our
I
NFL.
get mad about that too? I don't know.
And Nikki, all right. No, but
young too, right?
we have Chris Hale, who's going to be a regular former Buffalo Bills player. We have Joseph Dean, who's an absolute guru. He's from his home office in Alabama. He'll be on regularly, and all our guys here are capable of analyzing the NFL. And Handsome Howard Kamen is one of North America's top handicappers when it comes to the NFL. He will have a show here on TalkingSports.tv on Sundays, on NFL days. And so you'll want to tune in and watch Handsome Howard, probably with Josh, and we'll figure out the lineup as we go along. But absolutely, we're going to be the place to be for the NFL. Haley, your thoughts about the Patriots this year? Is Max out of his mind here?
See, you know that I hate the Patriots. I hate them very much. But I mean, the thing is, as long as Brady and Belichick are on the show, it's an easy 11-game win every season. It will be. I think so. I mean, I don't know if they're going to go as far as the Super Bowl, but they'll definitely win their division. Larry King talking about the Miami Dolphins.
Oh, come on.
Keller out.
That's just because he likes those guys.
Anyways.
That's not
no, even with the Hernandez thing and with Gronk being out and his back still being an issue for him, they're still the Patriots, unfortunately, and they still have Brady.
But they're without Gronkowski. He's going to be injured for much of the year.
He's going to be out for a bit.
What's his injury, Stu?
He had a broken arm. He
Broken
had
arm.
surgery,
And his back.
And then it got
His
infected.
back.
Now he had back surgery.
Matt?
Well, and Welker's gone too. I mean, he's gone over to Denver to help Peyton Manning out. So I mean,
I mean,
So now they don't have someone to drop the ball in.
it's going to be very
the
tough.
Super Bowl?
It's going to be interesting to see who he passes to this year, who emerges. Maybe it's Edelman, but I mean,
No, they got Amendola. They picked him up from St. Louis.
Amendola is
He's
not
a good.
Welker.
Well, no, but he's not Welker. He's a good receiver.
If he stays healthy, though.
Pardon me?
Tom
If
Brady
he stays
is a knack
healthy.
for making a
Yeah, but
lot
that's
of receivers
everybody.
look better than they
If they
are.
stay
The
healthy.
San Francisco
I know.
49ers win the Super Bowl. That's the definitive answer.
I'm going to go off the
I'm gonna back
reservation
you
here.
there, you know?
I believe the Washington Redskins are going to surprise a lot of people. this
What?
year. Remember last year, Adrian Peterson had reconstruction on his knee? RG3, I think, is going to come back and be a monster this year.
All right.
Hang on, Marty.
Okay, Ronnie, you can get up, Ronnie. And you want to say the New York Giants? He's showing me.
I'm always going to cheer the New York Giants, regardless.
All right, let's get a professional opinion.
I'll give you.
After you, Stu. After you, we'll go to Handsome
Okay,
Howard.
first of all,
So
when
Stu's
was
not
the
a
last
professional,
time?
is he?
Stu's not a professional.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
Anyway, first of all, when was the last time a favorite won the Super Bowl outside of the Baltimore Ravens last year, which were a favorite, who lost 4 of their last 5 games and should have lost 5 of their last 6 games? So they weren't really a sexy pick, but they somehow put together a couple of games in the playoffs and won. So all your preseason teams that look great, like Seattle, they haven't done anything in the past. So you got to go off the board to team. All these teams that just make the playoffs in the 5th, 6th seed have won a lot of Super Bowls lately, including Green Bay, the Steelers, where there were a whole bunch of teams.
All right, let's get Handsome Howard's
So-
pick, Stu. And Howard, you unusually...
Not to pat my own back, but last year when Marty York asked me who I liked in the Super Bowl at the beginning of the year, who did I
He
select?
picked the Baltimore Ravens.
Which means I'm not going to be right twice in a row. There's no chance, right? But what
Howard, you also chose the California Angels to win
Yeah,
the
you
World
chose the
Series.
California Angels. You didn't even get their name right.
Been twice
They're
in-
Los
right
Angeles
twice in a
Angels
row.
of Anaheim. He still doesn't know that.
I know a lot more about football than baseball, but let me say one thing. I'll tell you 2 teams that won't win the Super Bowl this year. The Arizona Cardinals and my beloved Oakland Raiders. And it pains me to say that the Oakland Raiders have 0 chance to win the Super Bowl, but I admit that. There are a couple dark horse teams and I agree with Stuart Greenspan. It's like, if sports was so easy and you just picked the teams that were preseason favorites that were going to win their championships, there'd be no reason to play the regular season. It never works out that way. Teams that look great on paper, not necessarily always win the championships. And I looked at a team last year that I saw going into the beginning, 2 teams that came into the beginning of the season, very highly touted, and I looked at them as snake-bitten teams last year. One being the Carolina Panthers with Cam Newton coming into his sophomore season where he showed tremendous brilliance in his rookie season, and then last year just did not get on track. But Carolina did come on at the end of the year. They are a team that has a lot of star players that can perform, and if this team stays healthy, with no pressure, even though they're in a very difficult division, I think this team can surprise a lot of people. I also like a team which, is similar to the Toronto Maple Leafs when we talk about sports, a team that just never wins, but eventually they have to win, is the Detroit Lions. And I watched the Lions play last year. They were a team last year that, God bless them, the Detroit Lions, but they were snake-bitten. I mean, they lost games in the last minute. I remember one game they were beating the Packers by 10 points with 3 minutes to go and blew this game. They've got quality players. They got the best wide receiver in football. They got a great quarterback. Their defense needs to pick it up, but I think the Detroit Lions can surprise a lot of people this year as well. So my 2 dark horse teams that might surprise some people. Mark it down. Carolina Panthers, Detroit Lions in the house.
All right, Howard, hang on to that mic, because, folks, I want to get Howard to talk about another subject. We'll get off the NFL for now because we're running out of time. But I want to talk to you about, and this is another prediction that Handsome Howard came in. And what about, folks, a little round of applause for Handsome Howard. He is the co-owner of this lovely establishment here at Charley Fitzwhiskeys. His buddy Davey Eisen, the other guy, right there. Get him on camera. There he is. All right. Now, Howard, you made a prediction going into this season. And, folks, if you go back to before the beginning of the season and when you talked about your Toronto Blue Jays, and you all ran out and you went and bought season tickets or at least season ticket packages because you thought they were no-brainers to win the World Series or at least get there, just like the bookmakers did. They picked the Blue Jays to go to the World Series. Handsome Howard had the audacity at that time to predict there was no way that the Blue Jays were going anywhere because of the hiring of John Gibbons as manager. He predicted at that time that John Gibbons was not going to be able to lead the Blue Jays, and he's turned out right. Now, why? Is it because of Gibbons that the team has done so poorly and has failed to live up to expectations?
Well, first of all, you don't go out and buy a Ferrari without knowing someone who can drive it. And I give full compliments to the Toronto Blue Jays. They went out last year and they went out and got some quality players that have performed very well in the past. But you know what? You need that final element. You need that person that can put the foot on the pedal, get the gas going, and make the team produce. And I look at the signing of John Gibbons when all the Homer Roger fans were saying, oh, what a great guy John Gibbons is. Such a nice guy. He's going to be great with the players. This team's going to win no matter who the manager is. But let's look at it very logically. John Gibbons never had a winning record as a manager. When he was fired by the Toronto Blue Jays, nobody hired him. The only reason John Gibbons was given the job of the Toronto Blue Jays is because Alex Anthopoulos needed a guy there that he could call the shots with, and he was threatened by any top manager. So I looked at this and I said, you know what? There is no way, even with all this talent, that John Gibbons is going to make this happen, and this team will implode.
All right, well, listen, we're watching Talking
And look at his
Sports.tv.
face. How can you respect a guy with a face like that?
Handsome Howard is
Says
taking
Handsome
the mic,
Howard?
and he interrupts me. I want to ask Nikki your
Hot
thoughts,
and
but I want you to
kettle, excuse
I
me.
want you to take the mic over, Howard, to your friend Brian Wilkes, who is a former NHL hockey player. I want to get his opinion on the way John Gibbons has handled Canada's Major League Baseball team, the Blue Jays. Here's Brian Wilkes.
Well, I agree with Howard on John Gibbons, but I think what happened was in spring training, I don't think John Gibbons took this team and did the things that he needed to do in terms of playing small ball, bunting, hit and running, doing those things to get them to play, to be a good ball team, ready for the season. They came to camp. Granted, they went to the WBC, a lot of these guys, and they were apart for a while, but they had 6 weeks, 8 weeks to work on things, and I don't think he did his job to get these guys to play small ball. You see how many games they lose by a run or two, and all they need to do is bunt the guy over, do some hit running, and they don't do that. And that's also, I mean, the starting pitching has let them down. These guys that they brought in, you know, maybe Jose Reyes is one guy they can keep, but and Burley's had come on lately, but a lot of these guys just haven't performed. But they need to be someone to lead them and to lead the way, and I don't think Gibbons has done that.
Let's face it, Nikki, the Blue Jays have been absolutely shitty.
Oh, they've been terrible.
A horseshit organization.
You know what? The worst part is that they're disappointing to watch or to listen to because of the lost opportunities. I mean, if a team gets blown out because their starting pitcher just doesn't have it, I can live with that. You're going to lose, 50, 60 games in a season, even if you're the best team in history. But it's those close games that they're losing, 1-run games, 2-run games, errors at critical times, lack of clutch hitting and stuff. But the truth is, the role of a manager in Major League Baseball is vastly overrated. Of the 4 major sports, the football coach matters the most because he draws up all the plays, followed by hockey because there's the most players to manage, followed by basketball because of the importance of drawing up plays, followed by baseball where it's pretty much all on the players. There's no system in baseball that you can design to make a bad team better. And if your starting pitching is going to suck, then your team is going to suck. That's just the reality of it. You look back in the last 15 years of teams that have gone to the postseason, and the single most important variable is how many starts their rotation makes. When you have starting pitchers getting injured, you're just not going to be able to fill that depth. And Brandon Morrow, who I know you love to hate, went down very early. Josh Johnson has been the worst pitcher.
Hold on a second. I don't love to hate Brandon Morrow.
You love to
He's
hate on
injury
him.
prone.
Yes,
Seattle
he is.
got rid of him because he's always hurt.
And the Jays
they
didn't
knew
give
it was
up
gonna
anything
happen.
for him, so it's not a big deal. The point is that Josh Johnson has been by far the worst starting pitcher in the major leagues, and nobody could have seen that coming. You don't see things like this just happening, ahead of time. No one could have predicted his collapse. Nobody could have figured that R.A. Dickey was going to end up giving up more than an extra home run per 9 innings compared to before. And they had 3 positions, left field, catcher, and second base, where the players they've been running out there are the worst in the league at their position. Emilio Bonifacio and J.P. Arancibia, who I think has the biggest mouth for the smallest balls in the entire Major League Baseball, has been atrocious. He is historically bad. I don't think there is ever
All right,
been a
guys,
player
enough for the
that
Blue
has
Jays because
that
they
has
do
had
suck.
so
and
many
Gibbons needs to be
strikeouts
fired.
relative to so
But
few
I
walks.
want to steal
And
the
then he
show
goes
for
and
1
shoots out the
second here
media.
because
It's
we've got
horrible.
Brian Wilkes in the house
Come
here. And Brian Wilkes has one of the few people probably in the world that can say he played alongside one of the greatest hockey players of all time, Wayne Gretzky. Brian Wilkes was drafted by the LA Kings, was Was Gretzky on the team at that time, Brian? Okay, but Gretzky got traded over. So what I'd like to...
Howard, the mic goes in front of your mouth, not your ear.
Oh, okay. Well, I speak too loud anyway, so I want to hear myself talk. But I'd like to get Brian a couple funny stories from Brian, or a couple interesting stories of playing alongside one of the greatest players of all time, Wayne Gretzky. Anything that rings the bell there,
Did you ever
Brian?
put the guy in his place?
No, I didn't do that. But I just remember the first training camp when he got traded in '88. There was an injury on one of his lines. We were playing an inter-squad game, and he was playing with Dave Taylor and Luc Robitaille. And Taylor got hurt in the first period of the inter-squad game, and we all went to the dressing room between periods, and everyone was wondering like who's going to play with Gretzky, And as we were walking out for the start of the second period, Robbie Fatorik, the coach of the Kings, tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "You're going to play with Gretzky on his line for the rest of the game." So I said, "Okay," and I'm skating around, getting ready for the rest of the game, and one of the other minor league guys said to me, "You can retire now, Wilksy, it's all done." So that was, I ended up playing on his line the rest of that game and got 3 goals with him. And I mean, if you're a monkey, anyone could score 3 goals. So it was pretty special, and he came up and tapped me on the pads and said, "Way to go, Wilksy, great job." So that's just something that
cool.
I was pretty proud about.
Brian, I want to get your thoughts about the other Toronto team. We've talked about the Blue Jays. We want to talk about the Maple Leafs a little bit. Training camp for the NHL starts in about 4 weeks. In 30 seconds or less, how are the Maple Leafs going to do this year?
Well, I think they've done a lot to change things. I like the grit that they've added with Boland and Clarkson up front to really help them with the grit up front. The goaltender, Bernier, is going to give them depth in the net. I don't think they helped themselves on D, which I thought they really needed to do, and they didn't do. And again, when a team's now they're expected to do certain things and to be competitive in the National Hockey League, when that's expected, you can't surprise anybody anymore. It's going to be a lot more difficult for them to just go into a rink and teams are going to lie down and say, "Hey, we're here and we're playing the Leafs." It's going to be expected that the Leafs are going to compete.
No one I know follows the NHL closer or is better connected to NHL players, GMs, and agents than this guy right beside me, Josh Rimmer. Josh, how are the Maple Leafs going to do this year?
Well, the thing right now that's concerning me is there's still Nazem Kadri and Cody Franzen have not signed their deals with Toronto. They're both restricted free agents. And it worries me that, you take a long time with these guys, they're not going to be ready for camp. If they miss part of camp, they're going to be late getting into the groove, regular season. Those are 2 big guys they need to sign. Cody Franzen was one of the best defensemen was the best defenseman for the Leafs last year, the #1 guy playing with Dion Phaneuf, who was supposed to be the #1 guy. Cody Franzen, #1 guy on the power play for the Maple Leafs. Plus, you have Nazem Kadri. I mean, he had a huge year last year, and every magazine or every person I'm talking to is expecting this guy to score between 65, 70 points this year. So you got to go out and he's got to sign these guys, and there's not a lot of room under the cap right now. So that's one thing that scares me. If they could sign these guys, Marty, I think they could go pretty far this year. I mean, they showed last year what they were able to do. They got in the playoffs, surprised a lot of people, took Boston to the brink. A lot of people thought, hey, you know what? Maybe they're going to knock out the Bruins. No.
Dave Pagnotta, sports editor of the Fourth Period magazine, Ronnie, is in the house. Let's get Dave's thoughts on how the Maple Leafs will do in this coming season. Only 4 weeks away till the preseason starts.
Yes.
It's been a quick summer, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
Dave Pagnotta.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year for the Leafs. They'll make the playoffs. They'll be a playoff contender. They'll fight for the second round. It's going to come down to their defense. That's really what it's going to come down to, as you were alluding to. I mean, this is a team that, even if they have Franzen in the mix, there are a lot of holes on that back end. As big as Dion Phaneuf is, they got to play a more sound defensive game overall. And the addition of Dave Boland's going to help. And the addition of Clarkson's going to add some grit. But it's going to come down to defense and the way that the head coach kind of maneuvers his way into making this team play better defensively. And Jonathan Bernier, by the end of the year, will be the clear-cut #1 on this team.
All right, Nikki?
Well, I'm curious because I really like the addition of Dave Boland. I grew up in Mimico myself, and he's a great guy from the same neighborhood. So the one thing that I've heard that's the nicest compliment about him is that if he had been on the team in Game 7 against the Bruins, they never would have suffered that meltdown. And I think that's the type of attitude that they need. But I want to ask you guys something. And especially Brian, because you have experience as a player. When you're looking through the schedule and you're thinking about how things are going to go throughout the whole season, are there certain dates on the calendar that you circle because you're going up against a team that you really just want to screw them over? You really want to just burn them because they're so highly ranked and so overrated and you just want to put them in their place? And follow up to that, if so, are those the Leafs this year?
Well, any Ontario kid who's playing the NHL, you circle the Toronto Maple Leafs that you're going to Toronto or they're coming to play you. So that's a given with an Ontario kid or a Toronto-born player. Every guy has a team that they really want to play against, that they really want to see. They circle that team on their calendar, and or if they got traded, like a Dave Boland, he might want to have it circled against Chicago when they go to Chicago when they come here. So definitely there is some extra spark when you have that team that you circle on the calendar.
Michael Finewax, senior editor of Roto World Hockey. Michael, what are your thoughts about the Maple Leafs?
Well, I agree with Dave, sort of with Bernier, because Bernier was their most important acquisition by far. I think he said by the end of the season he's a clear-cut number one. I say by Christmas he's a clear-cut number one. If Reimer's on, he's a top 20 goalie in the NHL. If Bernier's on, he's a top 5 goalie in the NHL. That's how highly regarded he is, in my opinion. I think if Bernier is on and is playing as well as he can, he's got a shot to make Team Canada.
All right, let me get Haley's opinion real quick. Haley, who's the best looking guy in the Leafs anyway?
Don't ask me that question. I try not to feed into that.
I always ask you something like that. Who do you think? Quickly.
I haven't even thought about it, to be honest. But
who's the best looking guy here?
Everyone was talking about Lupul, and I didn't
Michael?
think that he was that great looking.
Okay. What are the Leafs going to do this year?
I hate talking about the Toronto teams. I do.
I know, you're not a homer. I'll say that for you. Well, you are a little bit. But I like the fact that you will answer objectively. Will the Leafs make the playoffs?
Maybe.
Okay, thanks for that objective answer. Matt McCloskey.
I don't think they do. I think the guys, there's always going to be about 3 teams that you can say, okay, these guys are out, these guys are in. I think Toronto's one of those teams. I think Montreal's another one. I think the Islanders could be the other guys. All 3 of those teams are very young, and they could go either way depending on their internal development. I think Philly has too much talent on that roster. They brought in Strait and the Cavalier to help their back end and their forwards to help improve that team with Claude Giroux, Scott Hartnell, and so forth. I think the Carolina Hurricanes, if they didn't have so many injuries, could have been in the mix as well, especially Cam Ward. That was the biggest one for them. If he can stay healthy, play 60, 65 games like he's supposed to, they could be in the playoffs as well. I think Toronto, I like Clarkson, I like Boland. I think a lot of what Wilkes said was absolutely correct. I think they were talking today, these are the dog days of summer.
Who said you can call him Wilkes? It's either Wilksy
right.
Mr. or Brian.
Mr. Wilkes. They're talking today about who was the worst free agent acquisition this summer today on the radio, and in my mind, instantly it's actually Bozak. Re-signing him to that stupid contract has clogged the Leafs up from re-signing Franzen and Kadri, 2 bigger pieces than Bozak himself, who's a dime a dozen player. You can replace him with a lot of guys that are still available on the market for cheaper dollars. And, it's really, stagnated this offense for this team. He's an okay player. He's above average on face-off wins, but he's not going to win you anything. This guy's at best a second-line center. His re-signing has hurt this team moving forward.
Okay, Ronnie, give us your opinion while you're taking the mic to Shane from McCain's, who also wants to voice his opinion here at Charley Fitzwhiskeys on TalkingSports.tv. How's that? Go ahead, Ronnie.
About the Leafs?
Yeah.
A full schedule? Full schedule?
Yeah.
Not a chance.
So, do you think there was a lockout again?
If there's a lockout, they may have a chance, but only in a shortened season with the Leafs. That's only
Tradition?
They're not in anything. They suck.
They always collapse after 50 games. So 48.
There's the deep analysis from Ranting Ronnie Schreider. They suck.
Hey, since how many years have they sucked, Marty?
It's been a long time.
Okay. So
I think they last won a Stanley Cup in 1967. None of you were born then, except Finewax and me. Go ahead, pass over the...
Here we go for
Shane from McCain.
Shouldn't we be proud?
Hey guys, first of all, this is really cool. Thanks for allowing McCain Foods Canada to hang out with you guys tonight.
Thanks for joining us.
I just want to throw it back. I like the Kadri story that's going on right now, kind of the lines going around there. So having the experts in the room that we do, and I guess those online that are looking on, one thing that's interesting to me is, so you guys are Kadri's agent. Are you telling him that, you know what, look at Subban last year, dude, prove it to us, take a 1-year deal, sign for 2.5, 2.7, the big money's yet to come? Or are you saying, you know what, hey, I'm going to prove to you I'm the best agent in the world, I'm going for the big ticket right off the bat?
Josh?
Well, I know the Leafs are probably talking to him, telling him, you know, sign a 1-year deal and let's get you a bigger contract next year when we have more cap flexibility, because the rumor is the cap's going up next year. That's what everyone's talking about. Kadri's agent, if he's smart, I think he wants his player to stay here in Toronto. I mean, he was dynamite, he was lights out. Last year, probably one of the best players on the team most nights, although in the playoffs he did disappear, and I think that might hurt a little bit, maybe with contract negotiations, a guy that disappeared in the playoffs. And Bozak did too, and look at the payday he got. But yeah, if I was Kadri's agent, I'd be saying, you know what, sign 1-year deal right now, and we're going to get you big money next year, because we know that you're going to have a huge year this year. You're not a fluke, you're not a one-hit wonder, you're going to have a huge year.
Dr. Stuart Greenspan.
You obviously can't believe that Dave Nonis, by accident, left Kadri and Franzen with limited money in the budget. He could have signed those guys day one and had an open wallet and then have squeezed somebody else. If PK Subban, who's a far more advanced and more valuable hockey player at this stage of his development, could take a 1-year deal at what, 2.8? Kadri ain't getting 2.7, I'll tell you right now. Yeah. It's just not going to happen. Nonis and those guys painted themselves into that corner for a particular reason. They have a business model. They know what they're doing. If we get back to the Leafs, if I may for a moment, with the defense, the Leafs defense is way, way too soft. If they got to play Martin Fraser, who was an AHL hockey player, can't pivot. When he got injured is when the Leafs almost knocked off Boston. He made, if you watch him break down the games, he was jumping out of position on this goal, jumping out of position, was beat on this play. He was absolutely horrendous against the Bruins in the playoffs. If he doesn't skate with Barb Underhill, he can't return and be a top 6 forward.
Well, and now explain to the world that's watching who Barb Underhill is.
Well, Barb Underhill was, a Canadian figure skating champion, and she works on everybody's stride and with way more efficiency. But her husband owns the Guelph Storm, Gates, and he's been working with GTHL guys. A bunch of guys that my kids played with all went to Barb Underhill, and they work on their efficiency, their stride, and how they toe off. And she proves it. Like Lupo worked with him last year. If Mark Fraser, who I like everything about him except he can't skate, he's tough, he comes, he competes. If they got to come with him because they have no toughness on the back end, it's going to be a long year.
Okay, thanks, Stu. Michael, and then Wiltsey, and then Handsome Howard.
Well, as far as Kadri and Franzen are concerned, I don't think the Leafs are too worried, because I've heard that they signed Gunnarsson to a 3-year, $9 million contract, or $9 million plus contract. They'll just trade him, because they'll get something for Gunnarsson, because he's got a good contract. Lots of teams are interested in him, and that'll free up some money for both those guys. As far as Kadri's concerned, he had a terrific season last year, but he only had 2 really good months. And he's only had 2 good months in his whole NHL career. So it doesn't make sense. I mean, if I'm his agent, I want to do the best I can for him, but I don't think he deserves a long-term contract, not even 2 years. And I just think he'll be forced to sign a 1-year deal. It might come at the end of September. It might cost him money because he might not have a good season if that's the occasion. And as far as the Leafs are concerned, I think they're in the Eastern Conference. They're a 6th place to 11th place team, and they can fall anywhere.
6th place to 11th?
To 11th. They can fall
anywhere. This guy's negative.
He's realistic.
I'm a homer, right?
That's a fair assessment.
I agree. It's a
Most
fair
teams are between 6 and 11 anyway. I mean,
well,
let's
that's
be honest.
true.
That's like half the league right there.
On the Kadri thing, I think for Kadri, when you find the right coach and a guy who likes the way you play and your style, you don't want to change that up or do anything to mess with that. So I don't think Kadri's going to go anywhere. I think he'll sign for 1 or 2 years, a type of PK Subban type of dollars. I don't think the Leafs can give him much more than that. Have 1 or 2 good years, and then he can do whatever he wants after that. And I think that's the tack that he's going to take.
Just pass the mic over to David Pagnotta. I'd like to get his take on Kadri as well.
The difference between Kadri and a guy like PK Subban is that this was Kadri's first year where he actually had an impact on the team. He played 50 other games with the Leafs and did nothing. Now, granted, coaching does play a huge part in it, and being able to have the opportunities to get power play time and extra ice time, in your top 6 plays a factor as well. But you look at a guy like PK Subban, the Montreal Canadiens knew what they were getting themselves into with a player of his magnitude and his caliber going into it. He had a couple good seasons. He had a good rookie year. He had a good season beforehand. And then his final year in his entry-level deal performed well. So being able to be in a position to bridge that contract wasn't something he necessarily wanted to do, but he knows he's going to make $8 million plus in his new deal. For Kadri, after that 1 year, if I'm his agent, I'm saying I'm trying to get a 7-8 year deal as well, but we still have to be somewhat realistic. If I'm the Leafs, 1-2 years max at 2.5 is probably what they're looking at right now. And one of the reasons, and Kadri's not the only guy. Alex Pietrangelo with St. Louis, who is going to be a Norris candidate in the future, is commanding $7 million. He hasn't signed yet either, so it's not just the Leafs' problem either. It's other teams too.
Handsome Howard. Sorry, Josh, you want to say something?
Yeah, Dave, I just want to ask you, have you heard anything at all about the Leafs possibly moving any bodies out? I mean, we've heard rumors out there that maybe the Leafs might be trying to move some guys around to try to be able to fit France and Kadri both under the cap this year. There's been talk of Michael Lyles, possibly John Michael Lyles being on the block. We've heard Dion Phaneuf's name. Are the Leafs trying to move any guys out to make room for these guys?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, with the problem with John Michael Lyles is the fact that he's got 3 years left on his deal at 3.25, I think, a year. So that's a problem for a lot of teams, although I think he was definitely mismanaged with the Leafs this past season under Randy Carlyle. So I think if he can adjust and get more ice time, that he'll be a more valuable commodity. But the problem is you need to move a body now. They were shopping Franson. I don't think they're going to move him. Gunnarsson is a possibility as well. But I would be 0% surprised if Dion Phaneuf doesn't start the regular season with the Leafs. Doesn't mean they're going to trade him, but it's being talked about.
Handsome Howard.
I love talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you hate when I talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Because you're a homer.
Well, I'm not a homer because I did say they'd make the playoffs last year, and I did predict them against Boston, and unfortunately I was 10 minutes wrong. But I think to summarize it, the Leafs made great strides last year. Be it a shortened season, they showed a lot of heart. I mean, falling behind 3-1 in that series with Boston. I remember me and my partner, we were talking that day. We say, we'll see what the Leafs are made of now. Are they a team that are just going to fall down?
When you say your partner, are you meaning your wife Marla or your partner Davey Eisen?
My partner Davey Eisen.
Oh.
My wife doesn't know anything about hockey, so I wouldn't want to discuss that with her.
So when you're watching the hockey game, does Marla interrupt you?
All the time.
What? Like, I mean,
are we going to get into? Then we're getting into a whole different discussion, and we don't have enough time to discuss it. But come back the next time, and I'll tell you what I tell my wife when she tells me about not watching sports.
I'm sorry, folks. That's an inside joke. But I love it when he starts yelling that Marla is interrupting him from watching the game because what does she yell to you? What does she tell you right in the middle of the game?
Well, what ends up happening is I could be watching an NFL game. There's 2 minutes left in the game. I'm downstairs watching the game. My wife doesn't know all that much about sports, so she might say, Howard, would you get up here and wash the dishes? I go, honey, wait till the football game's over. No, you got to wash the dishes now.
Here.
Wait till the football game's over.
That's a good story, Howard. You're cut off now from your wife.
Let me just say something, one thing quick about the Toronto Maple Leafs, which I really believe is objective, because I don't think I'm a homer. I think I did predict the Leafs right last year.
True.
Morgan Riley. And I think everybody's talking about their defense. And what I've heard from my sources is if they were to conduct that same draft today, Morgan Riley would be the first pick of that draft. He has shown more development in these last 2 years than any other player in that draft. And I believe he may be ready to step in and do a job on the Leaf backline.
We've got a lot of experts here. I'm going to ask them to challenge you. Is that true, Josh? Yes or no? Just yes or no?
No.
No. Michael Feinwachs, is that true? No. Brian Wilkes, is that true? He's saying maybe. Dave Pagnotta, is that true?
Not first overall.
It's not true.
Okay, well,
Howard,
maybe they don't deal with the same
Howard,
sources I do.
I don't mean to put you on the spot because I've been accused myself of fabricating from time to time, but I think that was bullshit.
No, that wasn't bullshit.
It's an opinion. He's not claiming that they're going to pick him, right?
All that being said, That wasn't Brian.
He's got the best player in the draft.
The Toronto Maple Leafs will make the playoffs this year, okay? The Toronto Maple Leafs will be a better team with Jonathan Bernier in goal. I was never a big James Reimer fan, especially after his injury. He seemed to lose something. He showed that late in the Boston game last year when he led in what I would call 3 questionable goals. I think they'll be a better team with Bernier. I think another year with Randy Carl, who I look as one of their better coaches in the last 15, 20 years.
Better than Ronnie Wilson.
Way better than Ronnie Wilson. I didn't like Ronnie Wilson at all. So I predict the Toronto Maple Leafs will make the playoffs, and I think they will possibly even win a series.
All right, Handsome Howard came in. There you go. He's a professional sports handicapper, so you do pay attention to him. I would recommend that you do. You can follow Handsome Howard on Twitter at Howard Kamen. You can follow Nikki Thomas at Ms. MS, Nikki, Nikki Thomas. You can follow Josh Rimmer at
Josh Rimmer Hockey.
And he's got about 20,000 followers already, so you might as well join him. You get a lot of info if you follow Josh Rimmer. Stuart Greenspan, you can go and see Stuart Greenspan at his chiropractor's office in North York. Hot Haley Campbell, you can follow all over the place. Haley Campbell, modelsportsfan.com, that's her website. She has on Twitter at modelsportsfan. You can listen to her on Sirius Radio at Babes Dig Balls. And I mean, she's all over the place, folks, and she is outstanding. We're delighted to have her. Michael Feinwax, you can read his columns at Roto World. You can follow him also at M. Feinwax Hockey. And Matt McCloskey, you can read his columns at fantrax.com. And Matt, you're on Twitter at
MTTX Sports.
At MTTX Sports. You can follow Ronnie at Ranting Ronnie. You can follow Max Solomons at Marvelous Max. Brian? Brian's got nothing. Well, you got a business going on.
He's actually spending his time on something real, right?
Motivation Rewards, Brian. You can follow Dave Pagnotta at The Fourth Period and Twitter at The Fourth Period. Folks, we've got to wrap up. All of these folks will be on TalkingSports.tv on a regular basis. Josh will have his own show called Nightcap. I'll have my own show called The York Report. And all of these folks, and many, many more, will be on here on a regular basis. Make sure you tune in. Come out to Charley Fitzwhiskeys. Grab a mic. Participate. We're live. We're interactive. And we've got a great future right here. TalkingSports.tv. See you next time.
You were on today.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to